We weren't invited. We crashed. That's the first truth you need to understand. No human had ever been given a seat at the Galactic Council, not even a back row chair. Earth was considered a polluted upstart world, a scarred rock of war survivors that had clawed its way into space on rusted steel and stolen scraps of technology. They mocked us as scavengers, parasites. But when your planet is choking under embargo, when your people are starving, you don't wait for permission. You take your chance. I was the one flying the Mudlark that day. A ship barely held together by patchwork plating and stolen jump drives. My name is Reed Cade, captain only because no one else was mad enough to steer a human ship into the most dangerous haul in the galaxy. My crew, Harlan, Brigg, and Doran, were men like me. Desperate. Bitter. Too tired of watching Earth sink deeper into chains. We tore through the outer shields of the council spire like a drunk crashing a royal banquet. The alarms sang across the starfield, and alien fleets turned their cannons toward us. By some cruel luck, the old jump drive spat us right into the central chamber, our ship scraping across marble-like stone that no human hand had ever touched. The council floor erupted in screams, hundreds of species hissing, chittering, or roaring their disgust. I climbed out of the cracked cockpit, helmet under my arm, boots crunching across the holy floor. Every eye was on me. Those bulbous insect orbs, the narrow reptilian slits, the molten irises of creatures born in suns. I knew what they saw. A gaunt human in patched armor, scar across my cheek, eyes sunken from too many nights of hunger. Weak, pitiful, unworthy. Earth claims its voice, I shouted, my voice raw but steady. You starve us! You cage us! You call us vermin! No more! The silence that followed was worse than laughter. Then, one by one, the delegates began to jeer. Their languages twisted through the translator sphere above me, cruel tones delivered in perfect clarity. Humans breed like filth. Your species poisons worlds. Not fit to stand in this chamber? I held my ground, even when their guards leveled weapons at my chest. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could argue, plead, claw for dignity. But then the chamber shifted. The air grew colder. A shadow fell over the central dais. Every delegate shut their mouths. Even their guards lowered their weapons, as if remembering some rule written into their bones. That was when I saw it. The predator. It emerged from the high arches above, lowering itself on scaled limbs that clung to the stone like it was nothing. Its body was vast, longer than 3 ships, muscle corded beneath armor-like hide. Its head was crowned with ridges like serrated blades, its eyes glowing with a hunger that pierced straight through me. The council called it the Arbiter. But among whispers in the slums of alien stations, we'd heard another name, Predator King. It didn't walk. It didn't crawl. It stalked. The chamber, the councilors, even the air itself bent around its presence. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in the eyes of species that had mocked us. They feared it. The Arbiter's voice rolled across the chamber, deep and resonant, like stone breaking under pressure. Humans. The way it said the word wasn't mockery. It wasn't disgust. It was curiosity. You break the sacred walls. You spit in the face of order. Its head tilted, nostrils flaring as though scenting prey. Then, slowly, it bared teeth the size of my arm. You are either bold or very foolish. The councilors trembled. Some begged it to destroy us. Others hissed that humans were beneath its notice. But the predator's gaze never left me. I realized then, with a chill racing down my spine, that this thing didn't see me the way the others did. It didn't see vermin. It didn't see weakness. It saw a challenge. And when a galaxy has already crowned its predator, there's only one thing more dangerous than being prey: being noticed. The predator's eyes never blinked. Two burning embers fixed on me as though the rest of the chamber didn't exist. And maybe it didn't. Because the moment it stepped down from the dais, clawed feet cracking the polished stone, every delegate shrank back. Even the loudest of them, who had been shouting for my death moments ago, pressed against the walls like insects caught in sudden torchlight. But I didn't move. Not out of courage, no, out of something colder: stubbornness, rage. The kind that sits in your chest for years until it hardens into stone. We'd watched Earth burn, watched our children die coughing in streets while the galaxy looked away. And now here stood the thing they all feared. If I bent my knee here, humanity was finished. The Arbiter stopped a few paces from me. Its sheer size dwarfed me, the shadow of its body swallowing my frame whole. Its teeth parted, glinting wet in the chamber light. "You come here, human, without permission, without fear. Why?" The translator sphere above us trembled, struggling to render the guttural thunder of its voice. The words echoed in my bones. I tightened my grip on the helmet under my arm and forced myself to answer. "Because Earth is dying. Because you sit here fat on your thrones while we starve. You call us vermin. Parasites. I call us men." Gasps rippled through the council. No one spoke to the Arbiter like that. Not one of them dared. The predator leaned closer, nostrils flaring as though drinking in my scent. "Men," it repeated, savoring the word. Then a low growl rumbled from its chest, a sound too sharp to be amusement, too dark to be contempt. "I have watched your kind. Wars that scorch your own soil, skies choked with smoke. You fight without end, without reason, like beasts." My jaw clenched. "Then maybe it takes a beast to survive in this galaxy." The chamber erupted, alien voices shouting, claws scraping, tendrils thrashing in fury. Insults flew from every corner. "Kill him! End the vermin! Council must not be stained with human filth!" But the Arbiter lifted one clawed hand, and silence fell like a hammer. Every voice cut off, every body froze. It had absolute command, not through law, not through tradition, but through terror. "Perhaps," it said, eyes narrowing on me, "your kind is not prey. Perhaps you are something else." Its massive head tilted, sharp ridges glinting. "But words are wind. The galaxy does not bend to speeches, it bends to strength." My heart hammered. I knew where this was going before it even spoke the next words. "Prove it!" The ground shook as the Arbiter struck its claw into the stone, cracking it like brittle glass, its teeth bared in a grin that wasn't a grin at all. "One test, one trial. Show me that humans are not parasites, or I crush your bones where you stand." The council shuddered. Some jeered, thrilled at the thought of a human dying before their eyes. Others whispered nervously, afraid of what it meant if I somehow survived. Harlan's voice broke through the comms in my ear, ragged with panic. "Reed, don't. This thing isn't a soldier. It's a goddamn nightmare." I didn't reply. My body felt cold, every nerve locked in place. But my mind was strangely calm, because I understood something in that moment. This wasn't just about me. If I bled here, if I fell here, Earth would never rise. Humanity would always be prey. So I took a step forward, staring up at the predator. My voice didn't shake. "Name your trial." A sound rolled out of its chest like boulders grinding. Not a laugh, but something darker. Satisfaction. "Follow." It turned, stalking toward the chamber doors. The council parted like waves before a storm, terrified to even brush against its shadow. I walked after it, my crew stumbling from the wrecked mudlark to trail behind me. None of us spoke. What was there to say? We were being led into the jaws of something ancient, something that ruled not by law, but by pure fear. The doors groaned open, and the arbiter led us into a cavernous hall beneath the spire. The ceiling stretched so high it vanished into darkness. The walls were carved with scenes, wars, hunts, executions, not myths, records. The predator's history was written in blood. At the center of the hall lay a circle of obsidian stone, etched with glowing runes. Around it, balconies of alien spectators had already begun to fill, eager to witness what they thought would be my death. The arbiter stepped into the circle, its claws dragging sparks across the stone. It turned, its gaze boring into me. One fight, no weapons, no armor. You will face what the Council fears most. If you endure, humanity may claim voice. If you fall, your kind will be erased from memory. The runes flared. A gate split open in the far wall, stone grinding like the scream of mountains. And from the darkness within, a roar tore loose. The sound shook the hall. Low at first, then climbing, until it rattled my teeth. Something moved in the shadows, massive, hulking, bound in chains that glowed with energy. It stepped into the light. A beast, 8 feet tall, its skin armored in bony plates. Its arms ending in hooked talons sharp enough to split steel. Its eyes glowed with hunger, its maw a furnace of teeth. Every breath it drew steamed the air. The Council hissed and chittered in awe and fear. The arbiter's voice thundered. This creature has slaughtered empires, broken fleets. Even the boldest warriors kneel before it. Now it will test you, human. The chains fell away. The beast bellowed, the sound making my bones vibrate. Then it charged. I had no weapon, no shield, just my hands, my wits, and the sheer refusal to die. I dodged the first swipe. Claws screeching against the stone where my head had been. The second strike caught me across the chest, ripping through armor and flesh alike. I hit the ground hard, blood hot on my ribs. Pain exploded through me, but I forced myself up, teeth bared. The beast came again, faster this time. Its claw cut the air, missing me by inches. I grabbed a shard of stone from the cracked floor and drove it into its forearm. The shard shattered. The beast barely flinched. It backhanded me across the circle. My skull rang. Blood filled my mouth. The balconies erupted in cheers. Counselors shrieking for my death. But I stood again, staggering, broken, but standing. The arbiter watched in silence, its head tilted, eyes narrowing. The beast lunged. I rolled under it, driving my elbow into the soft joint beneath its plated ribs. It roared, thrashing. I clung to its back, my fingers finding ridges between armor plates. My legs locked around its torso as it bucked, trying to throw me off. It slammed me into the ground. Once, twice. My vision blurred. My lungs screamed for air, but I held on, nails tearing against its hide until they found flesh. Hot blood sprayed. The beast roared louder, staggering. Somewhere in the blur of pain and blood, instinct took over. The old human instinct. The kind that had carried us through caves and wars and fires long before we touched the stars. I drove my thumb into its eye, deep and hard, until the beast howled in agony. It thrashed, crashing into the runed stone. I didn't let go. I tore at its eye, at its face, until it convulsed and dropped to its knees. My body screamed, bones ready to snap. But I dragged myself onto its chest and hammered my fists into its ruined skull until the light in its eyes flickered and died. Silence. The hall went still. No cheers now, no jeers, just the echo of my ragged breathing, blood dripping onto the stone. I stood over the corpse, shaking, half dead, but alive. The arbiter stepped forward. Its shadow fell across me, vast and suffocating. It looked at the beast, then at me, and then, slowly, it bowed its head. "Perhaps," it rumbled, "humans are not vermin after all." The council erupted in chaos. Some shrieked in outrage, others in disbelief. But none of them dared defy the Arbiter's word, and for the first time in the galaxy's history, humanity was noticed, not as prey, not as parasites, but as rivals. The Arbiter's head lowered, the serrated ridges along its skull catching the torchlight of the great hall. The silence around us felt thicker than the blood dripping from my knuckles. I swayed on my feet, ribs screaming, skin carved open in more places than I could count. My body begged me to collapse, but I couldn't, not in front of them, not now. "Rise," the Arbiter thundered. "Stand before the council as more than vermin." I had already been standing, but the command felt heavier than stone. So I straightened my back, forced my shoulders square, and raised my chin even as blood soaked my chest and blurred my eyes. From the balconies above, alien voices erupted in a storm of chaos. "This is an outrage! The Arbiter shames us all. Humans cannot be granted place." The uproar rattled the walls. Creatures with chitinous armor clattered their mandibles in rage. Reptilian dignitaries hissed venom, and floating, tentacled things shrieked in high-pitched tones that made my ears ring. None of them were cheering. None of them wanted us here. The council had never looked more unified in hatred of me, but none dared step into the circle. The Arbiter turned its head toward the shrieking mobs, its eyes glowing with a cold hunger. One clawed hand rose, and the hall fell silent like the air had been sucked from it. Every alien present remembered what the Arbiter was, the final law, the last word. "Witness," it said, its voice echoing off the stone. "This human faced the trial of blood, alone, unarmed, against the beast that has ended kings and shattered fleets, and he lives." The word "lives" hit like a thunderclap. Some delegates flinched, others cowered. They hated me, but they couldn't deny the truth. "By the laws of trial, he has earned voice," the Arbiter continued. The chamber erupted again, this time louder. The sound was almost unbearable. Outrage, panic, disbelief. One alien, a tall, robed figure with eyes like pools of black oil, slithered to the front balcony and dared to shout at the Arbiter itself. "This breaks order. Humans are a plague. They destroy worlds." The Predator didn't move fast. It didn't need to. One glance, one subtle tilt of its head, and the robed figure froze mid-sentence, like its own throat betrayed it. The silence that followed was thick with dread. Everyone knew what they had just seen, the Arbiter's will bending flesh without a gesture. "Order," it growled. "I decide what breaks order." And just like that, the argument ended. But I could still feel the hatred drilling into my skin from every corner of the room. Hatred that was now carved deep into the foundation of the council. If I lived to walk out of here, I wouldn't be forgotten, and not in the way I'd wanted. The Arbiter turned back to me. Its head lowered until its maw was inches from my face, hot breath rolling across me like the draft of a furnace, my muscles locked. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs were stone. "You bleed well, human," it said, voice a dark rumble. "But blood alone doesn't make strength. You are a fire just lit, and fires burn out." It paused, eyes narrowing. "I will watch. I will see if your species rises, or rots." With that, it turned and stalked out of the hall, claws cracking the stone with every step. The council dissolved into chaos the moment it left. Guards rushed forward, weapons half drawn. Some aimed at me, others at the beast's corpse still steaming on the floor. My crew stumbled into the circle, pulling me back before the mob could tear us apart. Harlan's face was pale under the dirt and oil stains, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Reed, you're insane. You should have died. I didn't," I rasped, cutting him off. My chest burned with every word. And now they can't ignore us. Brigg, taller and broad-shouldered, grabbed my arm to keep me steady. His voice was low, almost fearful. "They hate us more than ever. You felt it. You saw their faces. They'd burn Earth to cinders if they thought they could." I spat blood onto the obsidian stone. "They already tried starving us. If they want war, they'll get it. But for the first time, they'll have to look us in the eye." Doran, the youngest of us, shook his head in disbelief. His voice cracked with awe and dread at once. "Reed, that thing, the Arbiter, it didn't kill you. It bowed. Why? Why the hell would a monster like that respect us?" I didn't answer him. Because the truth chilled me to the marrow. The Arbiter hadn't bowed out of respect. It had bowed because it smelled something it hadn't seen before. Challenge, rivalry, the same way two predators circle before deciding which one claims the kill. And it wasn't finished with me. Not even close. They didn't let us leave the council hall free. Guards surrounded us, herding us through corridors lined with hostile stares. My body dragged with exhaustion, every wound screaming. My blood left a trail behind me on the polished stone, but I refused to stumble. They locked us in a chamber of cold metal, the kind of cell meant to humiliate rather than comfort. Alien lights flickered from vents. The air stank of oil and sterilizer. My crew sat against the walls, silent, all of them looking at me, waiting for me to explain what I'd done. But what could I say? That I'd just painted a target the size of Earth across my back? That I'd woken something ancient and put it on our trail? That the council would never forgive me for forcing my way into their holy chamber and surviving a trial they'd never dared face themselves? No, they already knew. I sat against the far wall, head tilted back, eyes half closed. My chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. Sleep clawed at me, but I wouldn't let it win. I had to stay awake, had to think. Because survival in a fight is one thing. Survival in politics, that's where real monsters live. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time bled together. Then the doors hissed open. 2 guards entered, flanking a new figure. Not the Arbiter. Smaller. A counselor. One of the robed delegates I'd seen earlier, though this one carried no guards of his own. His eyes were thin, slit-pupiled, his voice a soft hiss. "You've made enemies, human," he whispered, words dripping with venom. "Every power in this council will see your Earth ground into dust for this insult. But—" He paused, his thin lips curling into something not quite a smile. "You've also made opportunity." I stared at him through swollen eyes. "Speak straight." He leaned closer. "The Arbiter does not bow, ever, but it bowed to you. That frightens them more than anything else. They will scheme, they will bribe, they will murder in shadows to keep you from setting foot in this chamber again. But some of us," his eyes glinted, "some of us see use in a fire no one can control." Harlan cursed under his breath. "We're not your pawns, Snake." The counselor ignored him, still locked on me. "You've forced your way into the game, human. Whether you want it or not, choose your allies carefully, or your Earth will burn long before the Arbiter decides your worth." He slipped something into my hand. A data shard, cold and sharp. Then he turned and left, guards trailing. The doors hissed shut again, leaving us in silence. I looked at the shard, blood still dripping from my fingers onto its smooth surface. Information. Or bait. Maybe both. Brigg leaned forward, eyes narrow. "Reed, you're leading us into a war we can't win." I clenched the shard until my palm bled around it. Maybe. But we've already been dying for years. Better to die fighting than starving in the dirt. No one argued. But in the silence that followed, I realized something terrifying. The fight with the beast hadn't been the trial. Not really. The trial had just begun. The first attempt came before dawn. We were still locked in that metal chamber, my crew restless, bruised, half asleep against the walls. My own body was a ruin. Ribs cracked. Chest slashed open, every muscle stiff as iron. But I kept my eyes open, because something told me we weren't safe. Not from the council, not from anyone. The hiss of the door was too quiet to wake the others. But I heard it. A subtle shift in the air, the way silence changes when death enters a room. 3 figures slipped inside, black-clad, their bodies shimmering faintly with cloaking tech that bent the light around them. Assassins. My pulse spiked. I forced myself still, head tilted as if I'd finally surrendered to exhaustion. They moved like shadows. Blades glinting faintly in their hands. Not guns, too loud. Blades meant for silence. One crept toward me. Its form wavered, thin and insect-like, its mask reflecting my blood-stained face. I waited, every nerve screaming. When it leaned close, blade raised, I struck. I caught its wrist, twisting hard until bones snapped beneath my grip. It screeched, but I was already ripping its knife free and slamming it into the joint under its mask. Hot fluid sprayed across my chest. The other 2 lunged. Harlan woke with a shout. Brigg surged up like a wall of muscle, Doran scrambling to his feet. The chamber erupted in chaos. One assassin leapt onto Brigg's back, slashing across his shoulder. He bellowed in pain but smashed the creature against the wall once, twice, until its body broke. The last one came for me. Its blade slashed across my arm, fire searing through flesh. I roared and drove my head into its mask, bone cracking against metal. It staggered, and I buried the stolen knife into its throat, dragging until it gurgled and collapsed. Silence followed, broken only by my crew's ragged breaths. 3 corpses bled across the floor. Alien blood, thick and dark, stinking of chemicals. "They sent killers," Doran whispered, voice shaking. His hands trembled as he wiped blood off his shirt. He looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. "They're not even waiting for trials or debates. They want us gone now." Harlan kicked one of the corpses. "Council trash doesn't want to get its hands dirty, cowards." Brigg pressed a hand against his bleeding shoulder, eyes locked on me. "Reed, this won't stop. The Arbiter might have spared us, but the others won't. They'll keep sending more until they get what they want." I crouched, pulling the mask from one of the assassins. Its face was insectoid, mandibles twitching in death. But the mask itself bore a mark, a crest etched into the alloy, a sigil I didn't recognize. Not a council guard, not official, faction work, which meant the council wasn't united. They hated me, but some hated me enough to kill me in shadows, while others, like the snake who'd handed me the data shard, saw use in me. That was worse than hatred. Hatred is simple. But schemes? Schemes rot empires from the inside. I stood, bloody knife still in hand. "They're scared," I said flatly. "Scared enough to kill quiet. That means we've already changed something." Harlan spat. "Scared? No, they're angry, and anger burns faster than fear." He wasn't wrong, but I wasn't about to show doubt. If I faltered even for a moment, my crew would see it. And Earth had no one else. They moved us the next day, not back to our ship, not that wreck of steel could fly again anyway, but to a chamber higher in the spire, a prison dressed as hospitality. Walls of gold and glass, alien servants slithering in with trays of food none of us trusted. The air was too clean. The silence too heavy. It wasn't mercy. It was control. They wanted us where they could watch. But the view, damn, the view. The chamber overlooked the heart of the council's city, a sprawl of towers glowing with alien light, ships drifting between them like fireflies. A world built on power older than our species. And yet for the first time, I didn't feel small looking at it. The Arbiter had bowed. The Council had failed to kill me. That city wasn't invincible. While my crew argued, I pulled the shard from my pocket. The one slipped to me in blood and whispers. I slotted it into the chamber's console, wary of traps. The screen flickered, alien symbols twisting into translation. What I saw hollowed my chest. Records, reports, sectors mapped in red, systems marked with the sigil I'd seen on the assassin's mask. Not council space, something else, something deeper. The shard whispered of a faction within the council itself, one older than the Spire, older even than the Arbiter's rise. They called themselves the Veil. They had opposed humanity from the start. The embargo, the isolation, every ship that had vanished on the edge of known space. All threads led back to them, and now they wanted us erased for good. Brigg leaned over my shoulder, scowling. What is it? The reason Earth's starving, I muttered. My throat was dry, my hands trembling against the console. The embargo wasn't just policy, it was war, silent war. Every move they've made. It was to kill us without firing a shot. Harlan cursed, pacing the room like a caged wolf. So we're not just dealing with a council full of smug bastards. We're up against a shadow cabal that already wants our bones picked clean. Doran sank into a chair, face pale. We can't fight that. Reed, Earth can't even feed itself. We don't have fleets. We don't have weapons. What do we have? I clenched my fist until my nails cut skin. We have what they fear. Harlan spun on me, snarling. Fear? You think fear's enough to fight this? You think standing in a ring and bleeding makes us anything more than prey to them? I met his glare with steel in my voice. It makes us unpredictable. It makes us dangerous. And in a galaxy built on fear, being feared is the only weapon we've got. Silence. They didn't like it. Hell, I didn't like it. But it was true. That night, the Arbiter came. No guards, no ceremony. The doors simply opened, and it stepped inside, its vast body filling the chamber, eyes glowing in the half-light. My crew froze, weapons halfway drawn, but I raised a hand to stop them. Because when the Predator King enters your cell, you don't fight. You listen. It studied me, its gaze dragging over the bandages, the bruises, the stubborn way I refused to bow. Then it spoke, voice low enough to rattle the glass walls. They already strike from shadows. Good. That means they fear you. That means you matter. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What do you want from us? It tilted its head, ridges catching the light. Not want. Watch. You stand on the edge of teeth, human. The Council wants your death. The Veil plots your erasure, but you... It leaned closer, hot breath searing my skin. You could be something else. A rival. A storm. My heart hammered, but I forced myself to hold its gaze. And what does the Predator King gain from a storm? Its grin was all teeth, cruel and endless. Prey scatters. Rivals rise, and when rivals rise, the hunt begins anew. It straightened, towering above us. Survive their plots, human. Survive their assassins, their schemes, their wars. If you endure, if you make your species rise from the dirt, then perhaps the galaxy will finally remember fear. And then it left, silent as death, leaving only the weight of its words behind. Sleep didn't come, My body begged for it, but my mind refused, because I understood now. The Arbiter wasn't protecting me. It wasn't sparing me. It was setting the board. We weren't prey anymore. We weren't ignored. We were in the game. And games like this always ended in blood. News doesn't travel through the galaxy the way it used to on Earth. There's no single broadcast, no one network. Out here, truth leaks like blood, through whispers, smugglers, stolen signals. But some things spread faster than silence can kill them. And word of what happened in the council chamber, that spread like wildfire. On Earth, the first sparks landed in the gutter. Pirate channels carried shaky footage ripped from the council's archives, smuggled out before anyone could scrub it. A grainy image of a man in broken armor, standing bloodied in the Arbiter's trial ring, fists red, chest heaving, and then, impossibly, the Predator bowing its head. It hit the colonies first, miners choking on dust in the belt, scavengers scraping metal off the bones of dead ships. They watched the footage in silence, some with disbelief, others with a hunger they hadn't felt in years. The message was simple, stripped of politics, stripped of lies. A human walked into the lion's den, and he walked out. On Earth, in the concrete slums where food was measured in fists and bullets, the effect was even worse, or better, depending on how you saw it. I wasn't there, but I'd heard the accounts later. In the ash-rained streets of New Moscow, people climbed atop burned-out transport husks and replayed the grainy clip on loop, shouting my name like it meant something. In Chicago Spire, gangs stopped fighting for a day, gathered around a projector stolen from a market stall, and watched a man bleed for them. They screamed at the screen like they were in the pit with me. And in the factories of Shanghai ruins, where men broke their backs for scraps, production stopped altogether. Workers stood shoulder to shoulder, heads tilted up, watching one of their own stand where no human had stood before. For the first time in years, Earth wasn't silent. It roared. But not everyone roared with it. The governments, what was left of them, scrambled to seize control of the story. Provisional councils in old capitals declared emergency broadcasts, painting me as a rogue, a criminal, a pirate who'd endangered all of Earth by crashing the council. They showed footage of assassins in black and claimed they were proof of universal outrage against humanity's aggression. They weren't entirely wrong. I was a pirate. I had endangered Earth. But what they didn't understand, what they were too cowardly to see, was that danger was already here. The embargo had killed more of our people than wars ever had. The galaxy already wanted us dead. And so, the governments preached fear. But the people preached something else. "Read Cade," they whispered. "The man who made the Predator bow." Back in the Spire, I didn't know the riots had started. Didn't know men had taken to the streets in my name, holding up crude banners scrawled with my bloodied face from the footage. Didn't know governments were branding me a traitor even as hungry men lit fires in my honor. All I knew was that the council had tightened the noose. We weren't allowed to leave the Spire, not allowed to communicate with Earth, not allowed to touch a console without guards breathing down our necks. They said it was for our protection. We knew better. They wanted to cut the head off the spark before it grew into a fire. But the fire was already spreading. A smuggler made it through the shields. I don't know how. Some deals can't be tracked, even in the heart of the council's city. He left us a message, a small device smuggled in with food trays. I played it that night, while my crew sat in silence. The holo flickered, grainy, distorted. But the sound was unmistakable. Chants, thousands of voices layered over one another, some in English, some in tongues that had splintered off long after the old nations burned. But the word was the same. Cade, Cade, Cade. My chest tightened. The holo showed faces, gaunt, dirty, scarred, children perched on shoulders, waving rags as flags, men with hollow eyes shouting until their throats bled. Women clutching babies as they raised fists to the sky, not soldiers, not leaders, just people who had nothing left but rage. Doran was the first to speak. His voice shook, equal parts awe and fear. "Reed, they're calling you a savior." I wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out was closer to a growl. "I'm no savior." Brigg leaned forward, eyes hard. "Doesn't matter what you are. Matters what they think you are. And right now, you're the first reason they've had to hope in years." Harlan spat in the corner, disgust written all over his face. "Hope? That's not hope." "That's desperation wearing hope's mask. They'll tear him apart the second he fails them. You know it. I know it." He jabbed a finger at me. "You didn't just fight a beast, Reed. You lit a fuse, and Earth's ready to explode." He wasn't wrong, but I didn't say it, because the truth had already set its claws in my chest. I hadn't just fought for survival in that trial. I'd fought for an entire species, and now, like it or not, they'd chained me to it. The Council's reaction to the riots was swift. Too swift. The day after the smuggled hollow reached us, a decree was announced across the galaxy. Earth would remain under embargo, but now with added sanctions. Any ship trading with humans would be seized, its crew executed. Any world caught offering shelter to human refugees would be fined, stripped, or purged. They weren't just tightening the leash, they were strangling us. I watched the broadcast from our cell, my blood boiling. Delegates lined the chamber, their words dripping with venom. Humanity is a contagion. They bring chaos to every star they touch. Their own world burns, and now they seek to spread the flames. Not once did they mention the trial. Not once did they speak of the Arbiter's bow. They wanted to bury it, pretend it hadn't happened. But the more they buried, the more it grew. Another message reached us, this time smuggled in by a guard who couldn't even look me in the eye when he handed it over. This one wasn't chance. It was war. The hollow showed fire in the streets, banners torn, buildings burning, soldiers firing into crowds, protesters screaming my name as they fell, governments cracking down harder than they ever had, terrified of losing their fragile grip. And through it all, one word on their lips. Cade. My stomach turned. I wasn't there to stop it. I wasn't there to lead it. They were fighting, dying, bleeding in my name, and I was locked in a cage on an alien world. Harlan slammed his fist into the wall, rage boiling out of him. Do you see it now? You're not saving them, Reed. You're killing them. Every second you breathe, more of them die for nothing but your shadow. I didn't argue, because part of me feared he was right. But Brigg's voice cut through the storm, low, firm. No. They're not dying for his shadow. They're dying because, for once, someone stood. Someone made the galaxy flinch, and they'll keep standing, even if he falls. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating. And then I realized what the Arbiter had meant when it said, "You are a fire just lit, and fires burn out." It hadn't been warning me of death. It had been warning me of this, that the fire would spread whether I wanted it or not, that humanity, starving and desperate, would seize it and burn itself alive on it if I didn't control it. I wasn't just fighting beasts in a ring anymore. I was fighting history. That night, I stood at the glass wall overlooking the alien city. The lights shimmered like jewels, fleets drifting between spires, a world untouchable, a world laughing at mine. And yet, somewhere below those lights, humans were rising, starving, broken, furious, and rising. I pressed my bloodied hand against the glass, leaving a smear. My reflection stared back at me. Hollow eyes, scarred face, a man who hadn't asked for this. But it didn't matter what I asked for. The galaxy had noticed us, and once noticed, prey could never crawl back into the dark. If we were going to burn, then I'd make sure we burned hot enough to sear their memory forever. They didn't come with knives this time. Knives were for amateurs. Knives were for the first wave of desperation, when they thought they could bleed me quiet in a locked room and be done with it. Now they were patient. Now they were clever. It started with whispers. Servants who wouldn't meet my eyes. Guards who tightened grips on rifles whenever I walked past. Delegates who glanced at me too long in the council chambers. Then quickly looked away when the arbiter's shadow moved. The trial hadn't silenced them. It had poisoned them. My survival was a thorn buried deep in the council's flesh, and now the wound festered. And like any festering wound, something ugly was bound to crawl out. They summoned me to speak before a smaller chamber. Not the great council floor, where the arbiter loomed and silence was law, but an auxiliary hall, ornate, hollow, filled with representatives whose eyes glittered with malice. I knew what it was before I stepped in. A stage. The chamber stretched in a half-circle, tiers of seats rising like waves, filled with hundreds of alien figures. The floor was bare, polished obsidian again, a circle that looked more like an execution ground than a podium. I walked into it alone. My crew was kept outside, for security. The murmurs were low and venomous. I caught fragments from the translator nodes hanging above me. Earth is contagion. He shames us by breathing our air. The arbiter has lost its edge. It bows to vermin. The presiding delegate, a thin-boned reptilian with gold scales flaking at the edges, raised a clawed hand. The chamber quieted, though the hatred didn't dim. "Human," it said, voice slick as oil. "You stand accused." I raised my head, meeting its cold gaze. Accused of what? Surviving? Ripples of outrage tore through the room. The reptilian sneered. "Accused of violating the sacred chamber, of disrupting order, of inciting rebellion on your own world." There it was. They were drawing blood without blades. "You call it rebellion," I said, voice hard. "I call it survival. My people were starving under your embargo. What do you expect them to do? Lie down and rot because you said so?" The chamber erupted again, voices shrieking over one another. The presiding delegate slammed its claw on the armrest, hissing for silence. "You will not speak here as though you are equal," it spat. "You are an intruder, a parasite, and parasites must be excised." I looked around the chamber, meeting eyes where I could. Some burned with fury, some with disgust. But a few, just a few, averted their gaze in silence. Not friends, not allies, but cracks. Cracks in the wall they'd built against us. Before I could speak again, the lights dimmed. The arbiter entered. It didn't come often to these halls. It didn't need to. But when it did, silence followed it like shadow. Even the presiding reptilian shrank back in its seat as the predator king stalked to the edge of the circle, claws dragging sparks across the polished stone. Its voice was low, dangerous. "You drag this human here to gnash your teeth and spill weak words. Why?" The reptilian trembled, but forced itself to speak. "The human is guilty of breaking order. Its kind breeds chaos." The arbiter's gaze cut to it, and the delegate froze mid-sentence. Throat locking like a chain had cinched around it. The predator tilted its head, eyes glowing. "Chaos," it said. "Yes, but order without chaos is rot, and rot is worse than fire." The chamber went still. No one dared breathe. Then the arbiter turned its head toward me, its gaze pierced through flesh, through bone, straight into the marrow of my fear. "Speak, human," it growled, If you have words, spill them now. Prove you are not prey. Every eye was on me. My crew wasn't here. No allies. Just me. And a galaxy of knives hidden behind silk. I swallowed blood in my throat and forced my voice steady. You call us parasites, I said. You starve us, cut our trade, choke our skies until children die in gutters. And then when we crawl to your door to breathe, you call it rebellion. Murmurs, anger, fear. You think Earth is weak, I went on, my voice louder now, sharper. And you're right, we are weak. But weakness isn't shameful. Weakness is hunger. Weakness is fury. Weakness is what makes a man sharpen stones into knives and storm a council he was never invited to. I looked straight at the Arbiter. Weakness is what makes prey become predators. The silence that followed burned. Then the Arbiter's laugh rolled through the chamber like thunder cracking mountains. Not a kind laugh, not warm, but a predator's laugh, deep and cruel. Good, it said. Spit your fire, human, burn them. The reptilian hissed, claw trembling against its seat. This is madness. He must be executed. The Arbiter cut it off with a growl that shook the walls. Enough. The trial was held. The blood was spilled. He lives. That is law. And just like that, the session ended. The delegates hissed and screeched, but none dared defy the Arbiter. Not openly, but hatred doesn't vanish. It festers. That night they tried again. Not assassins in the dark, not blades. Something worse, poison. The food came like it always did. Trays carried in by servants with downcast eyes. Alien fruit, bread, protein slabs. My crew dug in without thought. Hunger makes fools of us all. But I didn't eat. Not right away. Something about the smell. It wasn't right. Too sharp. Too sweet. I grabbed Briggs' wrist before he could take a bite. He snarled at me, starving. But I shoved the fruit against the chamber's metal wall. It sizzled, ate straight through the plating like acid. The room went silent. Doran dropped the piece he was holding, face white as bone. Harlan swore and hurled his tray across the room. Brigg looked at me, eyes wide. They're not waiting anymore. No, I said, my voice a growl. They've given up on shadows. Now they want us loud, dead loud. I crushed the fruit in my hand, the acid burning into my palm until I dropped it. My skin blistered, but I didn't care, because I understood now. The Arbiter might have given me protection in the trial hall, but here, in the corridors, in the chambers, I was fair game, and the council was sharpening every blade it had to drive into my ribs. But that was their mistake, because if Earth had taught me anything, it was this. When you've got nothing left to lose, you don't just fight to win. You fight to make your enemy bleed. The next morning, I walked straight into the council hall, uninvited. Guards tried to stop me. I shoved them aside, stormed into the chamber with blood still blistered across my palm, and threw the poisoned fruit at the presiding reptilian's feet. It hissed, recoiling, but I didn't stop. My voice carried across the chamber, raw and brutal. You want me dead? I roared. Then stop hiding like cowards. Stop sending knives in shadows and poison in bowls. Face me. Face humanity. Or I'll tear your walls down stone by stone until there's nothing left to hide behind. The Arbiter rose from its seat, watching me with those endless eyes. And this time, it didn't laugh. It smiled. And I knew then, the council might want me dead. The veil might want me erased. But the Arbiter? The Arbiter wanted to see me burn this galaxy alive. Earth had always been a graveyard. Before the embargo, before the galaxy's chokehold, we'd already burned it ourselves. Nations turned to dust, oceans poisoned, cities left to rot under the smoke of old wars. But men can live in graveyards if they have to. We'd been doing it for centuries. What we couldn't live with was silence. Silence from the skies. Silence from trade. Silence as the Council's embargo starved us one broken shipment at a time. That silence ended the day the footage spread. The day they saw me in the arbiter's trial ring. Drenched in blood, standing where no human had stood, the day the predator bowed its head. After that, Earth roared. It started with chants in the streets, my name on the lips of men too thin to lift a rifle. Then came riots, bricks thrown at soldiers in government armor, banners painted with my face dragged across rooftops. But riots are just noise, and noise, if ignored, dies. The governments didn't ignore them. In New Moscow, armored vehicles rolled into the slums, rifles spitting fire into crowds armed with nothing but pipes and rocks. In Johannesburg ruins, soldiers opened fire on protesters outside ration depots, bodies left rotting in the sun as warnings. In Chicago Spire, drones strafed blocks where gangs shouted my name, turning alleys into rivers of blood. And still, the people didn't stop. They rose higher, angrier, louder. By the time the Council doubled sanctions, Earth was already past the point of no return. Governments fractured, armies splintered, soldiers deserted their posts, taking weapons with them. Families barricaded districts, gangs crowned themselves warlords, and in the chaos, something darker took root. A rebellion. Not one flag, not one leader, just fire spreading across every ruined city, every starving colony, men with nothing left sharpening knives, building crude explosives, hijacking what ships still limped in orbit, and through it all, one word on their banners, their chants, their screams. Cade. I wasn't there, but the smuggled hollows told me everything. In the ash fields outside what was once Berlin, farmers dragged rusted artillery from museums and turned them skyward, firing at patrol ships that circled above. The rounds were antique, inaccurate, half of them exploding in their own barrels. But it didn't matter. For the first time in years, someone had fired back. In Detroit Basin, factories long abandoned sparked to life again, not for industry, but for war. Men worked around the clock, scavenging, forging, welding. Out of junk and ruin they birthed weapons, rifles, crude mechs, armored transports plated with scrap metal. They painted my name on the sides before sending them into the streets. And in the deserts of the Middle East, where sand had swallowed cities whole, tribes once divided by centuries of blood came together under one banner. They carried blades, rifles, whatever they could hold, and marched on ration convoys with chants that rattled the sky. The governments fought back. Of course they did. But when a man fights for a paycheck, he bleeds once and runs. When a man fights for survival, for the last crust of bread his child hasn't eaten, he doesn't run. He keeps coming, teeth bared, until someone dies. The soldiers learned that quick. The hollows reached me in the spire, smuggled through channels even the veil couldn't choke. One showed a battle in New Moscow, rebels swarming an armored column, swarming like ants across steel. Soldiers fired, cutting men down by the dozens, but the mob didn't break. They tore hatches open with bare hands, dragged the crews out screaming, and set fire to the vehicles. Smoke rose over the city, thick and black, while voices chanted my name through the flames. Another hollow showed Chicago Spire, a drone depot overrun, its machines hacked and turned back against their masters. Children, barely more than children, piloted the drones, strafing government lines while laughing through tears. The soldiers below broke, scattering into alleys as fire poured down from their own machines. The last hollow was harder to watch. It came from Shanghai ruins, protesters cornered in the factories, soldiers hemming them in. A standoff. The camera shook as chants of "Cade" rose, desperate, furious. Then the soldiers opened fire. Rows of men and women dropped, bodies hitting concrete in sickening rhythm, blood spread across the factory floor like a tide. The camera fell, the chanting cut off. The holo ended. My crew sat in silence, faces pale in the glow of the projection. Doran was the first to speak, his voice shaking. "Reed, they're dying for you." Harlan's jaw clenched, fury and fear in his eyes. "No, they're dying because of him, because of this." He jabbed a finger at me. "You lit the fire, Reed, and now Earth's burning alive." I didn't answer, because part of me knew he was right, but Brigg leaned forward, voice low and steady. "Maybe burning's better than starving quiet. Maybe for once, Earth's not going down without leaving scars." The room went quiet again, and in that silence, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. The Council had won. Not by killing us, not by starving us, but by forcing us to tear ourselves apart in my name. Word reached us days later. Governments were falling, entire cities declaring themselves free, rebellion spreading from the gutters to the skies, human fleets, ragged, half-functional, held together by spit and rust, were rising in orbit, banners painted on hulls, ready to strike at anything carrying Council seal. And the Council's response was swift. They didn't waste soldiers. They didn't waste fleets. They didn't need to. They sent mercenaries, alien war bands. Killers bound by credits, not politics. The first strike hit Detroit Basin. A fleet of scavenger ships fell from orbit, raining plasma into the factories. Entire blocks vaporized in fire. Men and women scattered, screaming, their crude mechs torn apart like toys. The rebellion didn't break. It roared louder, but it bled. Then came New Moscow. Mercenary ground troops dropped into the ash fields, slaughtering farmers with blades and rifles. The rebels fought back with antiques, ambushes, sheer rage. The fields turned red. Every hollow that reached me was worse than the last. Cities burned. Streets ran with blood, but still the voices carried. Cade, Cade, Cade. And I couldn't stop it. One night, alone in the chamber, I stood before the glass overlooking the Council's city. My reflection stared back. Hollow eyes, blood still crusted on scars, a man who hadn't asked for this. But I knew the truth now. I wasn't just a symbol. I wasn't just a man who had survived a trial. I was a weapon. The Arbiter had seen it. The Council had seen it. Even Earth, broken and starved, had seen it. And weapons don't get to choose where they're aimed. The next morning, the Arbiter came again. It didn't bother with words at first. It just loomed in the doorway, claws scraping stone, eyes glowing like coals. My crew froze, fear choking them. It looked at me, only me. "Your world burns," it said, voice like grinding stone. I clenched my fists. "Because of you, because of this Council, because of your embargo, your poisons, your assassins." "No," it cut me off, voice rumbling. "Because of you." My breath caught. "You stood in the trial, you bled, you lived. And now your world bleeds because it follows your shadow." It tilted its head, teeth glinting. "You think this is curse? I say it is truth. Fire spreads, and fire does not care what it burns." I stared at it, rage and despair twisting in my gut. "Then tell me why you let me live. Why bow to me if all it means is watching my people die screaming?" The Arbiter's grin widened, cruel and endless. "Because prey dies quiet, rivals die loud." It leaned closer, hot breath rolling across me. "And you, human, you are loud." Then it left, leaving me in silence. My crew stared at me, waiting for answers. But I had none, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if we were rising, or just burning alive. The war came to the spire. I heard it before I saw it. The distant thunder of fleets tearing at one another outside the planet's atmosphere. Alien mercenaries hired to pacify Earth hadn't expected humans to bite so hard. Our fleets were scraps, welded junk, but they flew like cornered animals. And cornered animals kill. Reports bled into the spire in waves. Mercenary ships burning. Human scavenger craft ramming cruisers. Factories on Earth pumping out crude war machines faster than they could be destroyed. The rebellion wasn't slowing. It was spreading, and the council was panicking. I could see it in the chamber sessions. Delegates screaming over each other, claws and tendrils shaking, threats flying across the room. Some demanded my execution to end the riots. Others whispered of negotiation, terrified of the fire they couldn't smother. The Arbiter loomed in silence, letting the chaos fester. And me? I sat in chains in the center of the chamber, guards at my back, my crew dragged in beside me like dogs. My trial had ended weeks ago, but this wasn't about law anymore. This was theater. The presiding delegate slammed its claw against the stone, voice shrill. This human is the source. His image fuels their rebellion. His name poisons our order. End him now, and Earth will fall silent. A roar of agreement followed. I raised my head, bloodied but unbroken. You're fools if you believe that. Kill me, and my name will grow louder. I'll be a martyr, and Earth will burn your fleets down to ash with my ghost. The chamber erupted again, voices spitting fury, but I didn't care. I wasn't talking to them. I was talking to the shadow on the dais, the Arbiter. It finally moved, claws scraping against stone as it rose to full height. Silence fell like a hammer, its gaze fixed on me, unblinking, endless. Human, you claim your death will spark fire. You claim your life already burns. Then tell me, what is it you seek? The question was too sharp, too dangerous, but the chains cut into my wrists and my people's blood burned in my veins. I had no choice but to answer. I seek war, I said, my voice raw but steady. Not just for survival, not just for food. I seek war until every world that spat on us learns to fear our name. I seek war until the council itself kneels or burns with us. Gasps tore through the chamber. Horror, fury, disbelief. But the Arbiter didn't flinch. Instead, for the first time, it smiled. The trial chamber transformed. Guards dragged my crew away. The delegates scattered in uproar, but the Arbiter beckoned me forward with one massive claw. The chains fell from my wrists like they had never mattered. Come, it growled. I followed. Not because I trusted it, not because I had a choice, but because I needed to know where this path ended. The Arbiter led me through halls carved in stone older than the spire itself, down into the abyss beneath the city. The air grew colder, the walls etched with runes that pulsed faintly in the dark. Finally, we entered a cavern vast enough to swallow cities. At its center lay wreckage, ships, weapons, bones, an ossuary of wars long forgotten. This, the Arbiter said, its voice echoing like thunder, is where rivals are remembered. I stared at the bones, some larger than buildings, others charred black, but all of them alien, none human. You've fought others like me, I said. Yes, it rumbled. Species that rose, defied, thought themselves predators. They fought, they bled, and when they burned out, I cast their bones here. It turned, eyes glowing in the gloom. Now humanity rises. Perhaps you will end here, like them. Or perhaps, its grin widened, all teeth. You will carve a new place. I clenched my fists. My body was still broken from fights past, ribs aching, skin scarred, but fire boiled in my chest. You want me to be your entertainment, I said, voice low. Another rival to test your teeth. It leaned closer, its maw filling my vision. I want you to be true. Prey lies, rivals bleed truth. For a long moment, I stared into those endless eyes, and then I understood. The Arbiter didn't protect humanity. It didn't hate us. It wanted us to survive because it wanted something to hunt. Back in the chamber above, the Council seethed. They demanded my death again, demanded Earth's annihilation. But when the Arbiter returned, its voice silenced them all. "This human will not die," it declared. "This human will rise." The chamber erupted. Some shrieked, others fled in fury, but none dared defy the Predator King. And then it spoke words that carved themselves into history. "Humanity has voice, humanity has teeth. Let the galaxy decide if it can bleed them." The rebellion on Earth became war, no longer scraps and riots. Fleets rallied under crude banners painted with my name. Factories turned into arsenals. Starving men became soldiers with nothing left to lose. And the Council, fractured by fear, responded in kind. Some worlds joined the Veil, calling for extermination. Others hesitated, wary of burning too much blood for too little gain. The galaxy fractured, and in the center of it, my name burned like a torch. But I knew the truth none of them saw. The Arbiter didn't give us voice because it believed in us. It gave us voice because it wanted us sharpened, wanted us hard, wanted us strong enough to make the galaxy bleed, so it could bleed us too. It wasn't ally, it wasn't enemy, it was the hunt, and humanity had stepped into its arena. The last holo I saw before leaving the spire was from Earth. Not riots this time, not protests, but a fleet. Human ships, patched and welded, rising from orbit like a swarm. Their hulls bore scars of rust and fire, but their banners shone bright. On their lips, one word: Cade. I turned from the screen, blood pounding in my veins. My crew waited, weapons in hand. Faces hard. We weren't soldiers, we weren't saviors, but we were loud. And in this galaxy, loud meant dangerous. Loud meant rivals. Loud meant the hunt had finally begun. The Arbiter's words echoed in my skull as I boarded the stolen ship that would take us back to Earth, back to war, back to fire. Prey dies quiet. Rivals die loud. I didn't know if humanity would rise or burn out, but I knew one thing: we would not die quiet. Not anymore.